computer. Okay. Just move this. Had some video. Sorry, I'm just need to look at this. Okay, I don't know how to do that. Okay, all right. So today is quite a good topic, I think, because where we live, we have a lot of foreigners coming and buying and selling property, predominantly on the North Coast and in Cape Town, where there's a holiday vibe and people want to own property, and it's absolutely no issue at all for foreigners to buy property. So you will get that question, and straight up, no, it's 100%. There was talk about limiting that, but let's hope that that doesn't ever come into existence. Okay. If anyone has anything, any questions, we'll just chat at the end if that's all right. But if you can't hear me or whatever, just stop me and let me know. Okay. All right. So firstly, people get a bit worried. What FICA documents do I ask for if I have a foreign client? Very simple. You ask for their passport, copy of their passport. If they are currently in South Africa at the time you're dealing with them, you need to check that they're not an illegal alien. So you need to ask them for a copy of their visa. It needs to be valid because yeah, you can't do business with an illegal alien. I'll go through that just now. If they're not here, obviously don't worry about the visa. It's only if they are here when you meet with them. Their marriage certificates, obviously, to also see if they're married or not. We only really worry if they're married or not with foreigners. We don't worry if they're married in or out of community of property. So when you're dealing with a client, and it could be any client, your first question must be, are you married or not? Second must be, what country governs your marriage? If they say South Africa, then you go on to, okay, do you have an anti-nuptial contract or not? And if they say foreign, then you now are going to know what to do, okay? Because I'm going to teach you on what to do. All right. So FICA per se, or marriage certificate per se, is not for FICA in terms of the act, but you need to know who you need to deal with. So that's why you need to ask for it, okay? And a proof of address overseas. We need to know where they actually live, not a proof of address for here, okay? I've said there in the notes, they must choose a local domicilium in case legal notices need to be served. So, you know, in all contracts, it says domicilium address. Please just write care of and whoever they are happy to get service, get legal notices to. Okay, that is because if we are going to sue them, or not we, because we're the conveyancers, but if somebody is going to sue them, the seller or whatever, they need to have a local address to send the summons to. So sending it overseas or giving an overseas address ends up being a very costly exercise. We have to track them down over there. So you must choose a local domicilium. And if you write care of, I think the conveyancers will know that they don't actually live there. It's just a local address chosen, okay? You can choose your own address if you want. You can put the estate agent's office address. That will be fine if they don't have any family or friends here. Right, they won't have an SA tax number. That is absolutely fine. A lot of South African people don't even have tax numbers. You have to earn over a certain threshold to get one. So that's no issue, right? And if they're buying in a foreign company, please be careful. You can't, they can't just proceed with a transfer with the overseas company. They first have to register it locally with the registrar of companies, right? We then have to cite that local number in our documents, okay? So that potentially could delay your transfer. To be assisted or not to be, so this is where the marital regime comes in. So if they are married, and we actually cited which marriage is governed by the laws of another country, and they want to sell, then you have to know that there needs to be assistance. So in terms of the Deeds Registries Act, it actually states that the spouse needs to sign the power of attorney, but we get them to sign the sale agreement as well, because you need to know if there's going to be any problems that spouse is going to give you. So you, in your sale agreement, should just write Joseph, duly assisted by his wife and her name, okay? It doesn't mean that that spouse is now suddenly entitled to half of the money or anything like that. All our Deeds Registries Act is, or Deeds Registry is trying to make sure is that people don't come here, buy property and just in their name and then sell from under their spouse's nose and take the money, when actually overseas there could be a marriage in or out of community of property system. Okay, but as I say, the deeds office don't really care about that. They just want to ensure that the spouse knows about the sale. If you can't obtain the consent, then it is possible to go to the consulate for that country and get a certificate to say that the marital regime is out of community of property anyway, so actually assistance shouldn't be necessary, and the deeds office will accept that. So we do have that problem every now and then. Okay, if you're buying, very simple, person can buy in his own name, whether he's actually technically married in or out of community of property in his country. He should know if he's married in community of property in that country and should have his spouse be joined, but that's not our job to figure that out, thankfully. So the Deeds Registries Act says you can buy on your own, okay? If you take a bond, however, you're basically alienating some of your estate. You will need the spouses to consent and sign one of the documents, but they will not appear on your sale agreement, okay? Told you about the reasoning there. Okay, so capital gains tax. Every person in South Africa who owns property and who makes a profit has to pay capital gains tax. It's quite a complicated calculation that I actually never get involved with because there's annual exclusions. It depends on your tax bracket, etc., etc. But the maximum is 18% for individuals, and it goes up for trusts and companies. Trusts again gets a bit complicated because if they distribute to the individuals, actually you can be taxed in the individual rate. But anyway, that's a different topic, which I wouldn't do. Withholding tax basically is to stop foreign people who owing capital gains tax from not paying it, okay? So what the requirements are is that if someone is out of the country for more than 180 days of a year and their purchase price is over 2 million Rand per share. So if I'm out of the country, I'm considered a non-resident, I have a property worth over 2 million, it's going to apply to me, okay? If I own with my spouse and the property is worth 2.5 million, it's not 2 million per share, all right? So if we deal with, sorry, just 1 second. Yes. Sorry. Okay, if we have to deal with this, then we have to retain 7.5% of the purchase price from our proceeds. If it's for a company, a foreign company, or a company when the individuals are foreign, or trusts, that's higher, but generally we deal with 7.5%, okay? You can ask ask SARS for a directive, which I always suggest that you do, because a person's going to have to pay tax in any event. So they might as well get an accountant to deal with it now. They will then tell SARS exactly how much they believe this owed. SARS will say, yes, thank you very much, that's fine. Instead of 7.5%, it might be 100,000 Rand. You can pay that amount. We would then pay it out of our proceeds and be done with it. And the clients can just move on with their lives, okay? And get their tax return and their tax clearance and take their money overseas. So we do recommend that. It is expensive. The guy we use is about 7.5 grand, and it's gone up to 15 on one occasion. So it is an expense, but listen, it's an expense that's going to happen anyway, and we'd rather that SARS not sit with the person's money than do. So yeah, the other thing is, if a client has recently moved overseas and still has a lot of assets here and is still a South African taxpayer and paying, declaring money every year, there may be a loophole where we don't have to retain if the accountant will confirm that they undertake to do the tax return and include this withholding tax, all right? Because the intention of this was to stop people from overseas who have no tax links here from disappearing and not declaring. So if an accountant goes and says that actually they're happy and they are still considered a taxpayer in South Africa and that they undertake to pay, then we may not do the retention. It is risky because what if the accountants are fired and they don't do it? So we would prefer to, but yeah, okay. Right, buyers. So there's no issue sending money to South Africa, but South Africa is not so good about allowing money to go back out of it. And they will ask for all sorts of documentary proof of the money coming in, the reasons it came in, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very important if you have a foreign buyer, when he goes to his bank and he transfers the funds to us, then he keeps a paper trail. What happens is the funds are sent to Nedbank Global in Joburg. They will phone me and they will say, there's this money coming in, please confirm what it's for, and this is the client, and they then report it to the Reserve Bank. Then the client will also need to keep a copy of their sale agreement and a final statement as well. So when they sell, the sale agreement must be kept and that final statement, and they must obtain a tax clearance certificate to move their money out of the country. Okay. We do have people that can help with that if anyone needs. We cannot transfer funds directly overseas from our trust account. It has to go via an intermediary or into a person's South African account, depending. And if they are a seller, then technically they should have a South African account because they would have been getting rentals and paying all the expenses out of it. But if in doubt, you can ask me on that. Okay. Taking finance. Buyers will allow foreigner or non-residents to finance only 50% of the loan to value. So that's quite important. If you start dealing with people that are completely out of the country, don't have spouses that are here or whatever, they will only be able to get 50%. Don't forget to quote them on their costs for the bond and the transfer, and only if they have enough money, then should you proceed with them. Okay. If they're buying with the SA resident, different banks have different policies, but basically the general rule is the 50%, but in some instances, if the primary applicant is South African, and then you might be able to get a little bit more. Okay. Signature of documents. So this is incredibly important. When we send, let's deal with the seller first. A seller will have to sign a power of attorney to pass transfer, any applications, and then the rest of the documents. But the most important is the power of attorney to pass transfer. That gets lodged in the deeds office. And I'm not talking about a special power or general power. I'm talking about the actual power of attorney for the transfer. That has to be signed in a very specific way. And the deeds office are incredibly sticky about this. So if you're a buyer, you actually only have to sign affidavits and a transfer duty form and whatever. So it's not as strict, but sellers, we have to be very careful. Okay. So there's two ways to sign in terms of the High Court Act or in terms of the Hague Convention. So the High Court Act basically says that you must go to a person in the foreign country who's tasked with signing, and in most instances, 9 out of 10 instances, it's actually a notary public. The notary public needs to sign. Then a notarial authentication certificate has to be attached, which says the notary is who they are and they are actually a notary. And that's also attached. And they must say signed in my presence, and affix their stamp and signature and sign each page. And it's, yeah. The other thing is the people could go to a SA consulate to sign. That's quite simple. They literally just go and get it signed. They don't have to have a notarial authentication certificate or anything like that. That's just a one-stop trip, okay? If the country where they are staying and they want to sign is party to the Hague Convention, Hague Convention is basically a whole lot of countries that got together to deal with things. So delinquent countries generally aren't part of that. like the DRC, Zimbabwe, etc. But if they are, then they can sign in a certain way where they go to a notary to sign, and then that notary, instead of getting a notarial authentication certificate, gets an apostille from a higher being, a higher power, and usually that's an equivalent of a registrar of courts, and that again confirms who the notary is and they are qualified to do what they need to do. Okay. Don't forget, we also need, other than our transfer documents signed, we need their FICA, certified copies of their FICA, and it might be that we need a couple of copies because maybe the bond attorneys also need, if it's a buyer. Yeah, so what we often say for people overseas is when they're going to go sign, do you mind, as well as signing our transfer documents, to sign a special power of attorney in our favor or in favor of somebody they know locally? And that is because there can, a lot of situations can arise during the process where could be a potential error on the documents that was registered before that we have to do. Literally, if you have one typo, you have to redo the documents. So it is just safer that we can then sign them for them. We obviously don't sign anything without letting them know. Yeah, it's just saves them going back 2 trips then to get documents signed. Okay, and also, by the way, in the UK and various other countries, a notary is incredibly expensive, £10 a page sometimes. So it's clients are not happy. So when you do deal with foreign people, people that are overseas, please just make sure that you tell, you warn them that this could be an expense that they need to budget for. Okay, visas. If you buy a property in South Africa, do you get any further rights to visas? Unfortunately, no, or fortunately, not sure which. It's a completely separate issue, which I'm not an expert on, but you basically can get a holiday visa, business or investment visa, or a work visa. But generally 90 days is the time that they can be in here. They need to come and go. And as I say, you need to check if they're here, that their visas are valid. If they're not, we've got a problem. We had one instance where the guy had a South African visa, and on the visa it said it's valid for as long as he's married to this lady. He was now renting a property and he had divorced her. So then you kind of have to think, well, what now? So check out the visa situation right in the beginning. Maybe they are busy getting a renewal or something. Okay. That's the legal alien part. So don't let me go through, I won't go through that again, but no, you're not allowed to do business with a legal alien. So you could come quite short if you don't check up on that. Okay. Terrorist list. So in terms of the FICA laws, you all know that you've got to collect FICA documents. That's from people locally or overseas. You've got to do your due diligence on them, which I'll go through now. And you actually meant to check that they're not listed terrorists. So there's the link I've given you. So every estate agency should have a policy in place whereby when opening a file, the person is searched for on this website. It hopefully says person not found. Yes, they could use an alias or whatever, but you do your best to figure out that they're not on that list, and you print that and you put that in the file in case it's ever checked on, okay? If they are terrorists, clearly you can't do business with them, okay? Okay, FICA and source of wealth. So I've discussed that you need to do a due diligence on the clients. This is actually not being done by a lot of people, including attorneys. So they're just collecting the documents, but you're meant to verify the source of wealth for people. So you need to check they're not a terrorist. You need to attain the FICA. You need to rank them on a scale of low to high risk. Are they politically exposed? They're automatically high risk. You've got to do extra due diligence on them. Are they just a couple who's coming to buy a property and they've saved all their lives? That's they're low risk. You know, just carry on. You do need to write this due diligence and put that in the file. So please, any agencies, make sure by lodgement you have that. But the one very awkward thing that we have to do in this FICA Amendment Act is to verify source of wealth. Now, that's a bit grey. It's not really clear as to how far we're meant to go to verify the source of wealth, but we need to figure out how these people we're dealing with made their money, and if the money that they've made is actually legit or not. So it gets a bit awkward, I must say, and if it gets so awkward that they just will not cooperate with you, maybe you could say, well, the attorney is also going to have to do this, so you can explain this to them and make sure that the attorney you're working with does this, and will give you the information that you require to finish your due diligence. Okay, if someone will not verify their source of wealth, if they react really badly or anything, you most probably should report them to the FIC. And remember, in terms of that, your one reporting will not amount to an investigation. The FIC are too busy to investigate every person that's reported. It will, if lots of people raise their hands, then there will be. Okay, so verifying source of wealth for somebody overseas. Most countries actually, or a lot of countries are already doing this. America certainly, UK, so it won't be such a shock. They can maybe just provide an explanation. It's not where the funds are sitting, so they're sitting in my Barclays, a bank account overseas. No, how did you make them? Are you a salaried employee? Are you from savings? Is it you got dividends from companies? Is it inheritance or whatever? And as I say, it's very grey, because how far do we go? If someone said, well, in 2002, my granny died and left me a whole bunch of money, what exactly we're meant to do with that? But just do your best to figure that out, and then you write a story on the person that you are comfortable that this is legit money. Okay. And this is a very short session, so that's it. So please don't forget, the system is a bit flawed in that I can only see who's registered. I can't see who attended. So please, can you email me now when you log off that you've attended, and I will keep it, and I will then give you certificates. If anyone hasn't got their certificate from the last session, let me know, because I have sent those out. Maybe I didn't get an email from you to confirm. So yeah, just let me know on that. Okay, I just want to stop recording here.